they're going to be perhaps experts in a platform or a language or something that they can use to implement whatever your software might be. But for them to be able to reliably deliver what it is that you need, you have to be able to speak to them in a way that will bridge that gap. So what is that like? Way back in the day, like even in the Southwest, you probably heard that pueblos were built by the native peoples here. If you had an additional family member, you would just do something and throw it together. And so over time, you would have some sort of accumulated project. But if you were to try to build a house like that today, how would that go? Probably not too well, right? And so what you need to do in order to reliably build software is similar to what you need to do nowadays in order to reliably build a house or some sort of building project. You need a blueprint. You need something that is going to be able to be used by all the various contractors, the main builder, all of the subcontractors, all the specialists who do plumbing, who do electrical, who do drywall, who do framing. And that's where you need to be able to do something that's analogous using software. So what I'm going to talk to you about more specifically is a framework for doing that. I don't have a name for it or anything like this, but it's something that I've been using very reliably for a number of years. It's, if you had to place it into a domain, it would be called business analysis. You guys have probably heard of that domain or heard of people that work at large corporations who do business analysis. There's a, let's see, there are two main ways of approaching business analysis, one, at least in terms of software. One of them is very, very old. It's called waterfall, the waterfall method. And with waterfall, what you tend to do is you try to document every single detail that you can think of well in advance of doing any development whatsoever. You don't write even a lick of code until you've written like phone books worth of detail about your project. That was very, very popular for a long time, but it proved to be a bad way of doing it because software isn't something that you can build an encyclopedic book about, because it's like a living, evolving entity. It's like a living thing that you have to be able to create. And so it turned out to be a very inefficient way to do it, and also did not produce good results. You might have heard also of something called agile development. Is that something that you guys might be familiar with?
What is it?
Agile? Yeah. A-G-I-L-E. Yeah. And so it sort of takes the exact opposite approach from waterfall. What you try to do instead is to start with very light sort of objectives. You just come up with basic narrative stories about what it is you're trying to implement. And as you're going through the process, you flesh out the details. You try to organize it in a way that allows you to work on things iteratively. So you're going to do work for a certain period of time, evaluate the outcome, then go back and see how you are doing, and then go into the next wave of development. So you're going to be doing this, cyclically and iteratively over time, eventually winding up with the software that you need at the end. That is probably a better approach, but the problem is that it's a little bit unguided, right? You don't know if you're necessarily going to get to that endpoint. You could just iterate and not really accomplish what you need, right? So I like to do something that's kind of between the two. I think what you have to do is you have to commit the amount of time and effort and energy to get what you can out of your head and into a document that can be usable by your clients, your business partners, and most importantly, your customers also, but also most especially with the engineers that you'll be working with to create your software. So it's something that's intended to be agnostic in the sense that it's something that's human readable. It's not just a bunch of technical gobbledygook that developers or engineers would need, but it is what they would be able to use to effectively implement exactly what your objective is. Okay, so I want to go somewhere between those two, somewhere between encyclopedic, like writing this huge, massive phone book of details before starting, versus on the other extreme, doing something that's kind of loosey-goosey. We're just going to start with this and kind of work on it for a while and see where we wind up. And then do that again, sort of refining, getting closer, and hopefully eventually getting to it. So we're going to put stuff out there. To begin with, it's going to put as much as possible and without overdoing it. So does anyone have any questions so far? No? Okay. Before I go on, I'm just wondering, how many of you are doing software projects? They're actually software related businesses.
They didn't know we were.
Yeah, unbeknownst to us.
Oh.
Apparently we are.
Okay, great. Well, this is geared towards creating basically custom software implementations. But I wanted to mention that it's also useful for other businesses that are not software related. And the reason why is because couple reasons. One is because there are always opportunities for technological enablement. So if you're not a technology business, it's still going to be hard for you to scale if you don't use technology, right? Like if you're, a brick and mortar, you need the internet to be able to scale, probably to reach customers, to find new channels for your business, that sort of thing. So this kind of analysis still applies even if you're not building software. And I'd like you to think about it in terms of, I'm going to use descriptions that are probably better fitted to doing custom software, but it's also going to apply for businesses that are not about creating software. And the way it will benefit you is by being able to identify through what your business does, what it needs to do, these are technological. So ways to say, okay, we're blocked here, we can only get 10 people to come through our door per day. But if you find some tool that allows us to get 100 through the door, that's what you're looking for, right? That would not be custom software, we'd be looking for something off the shelf that would help you guys accomplish that. So just bear that in mind. I don't want to bore you guys who are not technology companies. This is still applicable to that. Okay, all right, so let's dive right in. Either this is going to be incredibly interesting, like give you guys like a totally new way of viewing the world and software in particular, or I'm going to put you all to sleep. So I'll try to aim for the version. Let's see again. So it's really important to come up with a comprehensive picture that is not burdened like waterfall method with too much detail. So comprehensive, what do I mean? You want to have something that covers all of the details, but at a level that's like an outline, something that's like bullet points. You don't want to go in and create too much detail. So at the very highest level, I like to call out things that are called epics. This is an Agile term. And what it really means is big functional areas, things that your business needs to do. So if you think about a site like perhaps, kind of like an e-commerce site, a good example, I guess, what is the main epic? Somebody can go onto the site and they can purchase some goods that are available for sale. That is probably the main epic of any e-commerce site. But there are a number of other related epics, things like customer service, right? So you might be able to go onto the site and find information for your products, or you might be able to go in and do warranty information, or sign up for warranties or get warranty support. That's a separate epic altogether. But so at the typical site, it's going to have a bunch of epics, but they're big functional areas that kind of together tie into the whole that is your business. So let's see. Tell me what your main epic is. What is your main epic for your business?
E-commerce.
It is e-commerce.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
cool.
it's buying white label documents specifically for the nonprofit fundraising instrument. Yeah.
Anybody else? What's your main epic?
Let's see. I know what it is. I'm just thinking in terms of that short story. I guess it's a discovery of new food you might like.
Okay, cool. All right, cool. Sounds good. One more. What's your
Funding scale up.
Okay.
Yeah, because so that entrepreneurs like you can grow.
Okay, that's cool. Okay, so it's funding college. Right. Okay. You guys probably have some secondary ethics as well, right? So
We probably have customer service.
customer service would be one of them, right? If I'm thinking you might have like regulatory, statutory or regulatory things that you have to do. So yes, Congress, you always have things like payment, right? You have to think about integration with third parties, things like that. How do you guys, do you have any secondary ethics at all you can think of? Just everything you have to do?
Yeah, sending people to Open Table to make reservations.
Okay, cool, perfect. So yeah, okay, that's great. All right, so ethics are absolutely critical. You have to be able to articulate your project or company or software in terms of ethics. If you can't do the ethics, then there's no way to drill down into the detail of your business in a way that is meaningful and structured, right? If I start mixing ethics together. Like, I kind of want to do e-commerce, but then I want to go into customer support. I want to go into something that's different or related. It is very difficult for somebody to implement that. So thing number one, what are your ethics, right? And I would say, what is the main one? There might be a main one or two. Main one or two. And then secondary ethics. And very complete.
So for an MVP, are you trying to minimize ethics?
Sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's always a good idea because if there's something that is a nice to have, then yes, absolutely. You want to put it into a future release, right? It's still always a good idea to call it design because it helps inform the overall picture for somebody who's looking at it from a business level, or if somebody's implementation, thinking, okay, I know we're not doing this now, but I know I need to build it in the future. What's the grand vision, right? Because that way they can plan for it. So I always like to call it as much stuff as possible, but then just noting that this is something that will be in a later release. Comprehensiveness, that's definitely the way to go. Again, without overburdening it with too much detail. I like outlines and bullet points. That's all you need to do. Okay, so any questions about ethics? They're pretty straightforward, right? All right, so next level down, pages. This is strictly for implementations for web development or for mobile development. Everything is done typically with pages, right? Page to page. There are things called one-page apps now, but even they have sections. You scroll through them as opposed to page. The analogous thing to what you're doing if you do not have a technology business would be perhaps something related to documents, right? Paper flow or workflow that you have through your business. Pretty much every business will have some way that they have to get information, to store information, to put it through some sort of process or migration from one event endpoint. And that's all we're doing here with pages. We're just finding the way that we have to express in individual pages the ethics that are here. So if you think about your website, a typical set of pages would be a landing page, something that shows off what your company is, what your basic products are, that kind of thing. You have category pages for specific types of products you might have. You would have individual product pages that are all detailed pictures, multiple views, what the price is, you can have these cart and that sort of thing, right? So an e-commerce site is going to have multiple pages like this. An interesting example of a software site that has a ton of ethics, but pretty much only one page is Facebook. Have you guys been on Facebook? Pretty much, yeah. All right, so if you think about Facebook, you go to one page, right? You just sort of land on it, and there's this big long column of stories that have been posted by your friends and such. You can pretty much just do one. You can read that thread, or you can go to the top and you can put in your own story, doing a picture, a link to the video, or whatever. If you look at the page also, if you pull it up, you guys are allowed to look at Facebook right now. There are so many other things going along the sides of that page, right? There are things where you can see what your friends are up to, what they like, what they've been doing. There's a thing on the left that shows you basically everything that's related to your Facebook presence that is not that one thread. So what groups you're in, what pages you have created, that sort of thing. There are ads that appear. And this is really where Facebook makes its business. So if you had to think about what the main ethic is, it's capturing eyeballs, right? It's getting people to come to their page frequently to look at these screens, but then to convert those views into ad revenue for them. So there are ads everywhere, and the posts that you're seeing are promoted typically, so people are having to pay for them to be visible to you. So business has a post on there, they're typically going to be paying so they can use it. So I just wanted to mention this, that although normally you have per each epic multiple pages, that's not a hard and fast rule. You can have a single page with a ton of epics embedded in it, right? But the main case is that you have a big function here, and within it you have multiple pages. So in terms of implementation, this is where you start working with a designer. This is where you're going to meet somebody who has some design expertise, the ability to start taking these big functional areas and breaking them down into smaller units that are pages. The tool that can be used to do this, if you're not a professional designer, something that someone used for wireframing?
Balsamic is what I use for
Yeah.
wireframing.
Balsamic, yeah, and that's part of the, less suite.
Yeah.
Is it anymore?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so
If those of you who are wireframe before, it's just like a grid layout with drag and drop, like common buttons, text entries. You can start moving things around to see how the user interface would work on the page.
yeah, so you can just mock it up really quickly. So if you're not an expert designer, I am definitely not an expert designer at all. It's a great way to piece things together really quickly, just basic elements, visual components, in a way that it's just like an outline. So very high level. All right, so any questions about pages? This is all pretty basic so far. We're going to get a little bit more complicated. Okay, great. So on pages, we talked about wireframes a bit, and what you want to be having on there are page components, especially on web design. All right, so you're going to have graphical images, you're going to have static text, you're going to have buttons that when you click on they do something. And you have to be able to articulate what those are, again, in the context of having to accomplish the epic. What is it your page needs to do in order to take care of part of this epic? So typical page e-commerce again, you're going to be able to, on the product page, put in the quantity you want to purchase and quickly add to cart button. So you have to have nope, and the button in the middle, right? So some of them are going to have a higher level of importance or significance than others. Some of them are just going to be basic static fields. Others are going to be very highly interactive fields, which brings us to our next level, under page components, which are user interactions. Okay, so now we're getting into the nitty-gritty, because at the user interaction level, that's where you're going to call out every single user interaction that's possible on your page, right? What can a person do? If you look at a typical header, there's going to be a menu up at the top. So you want to articulate what they can do, how they interact with that menu bar. You click on this menu option, they go to this page. They go to this widget, they are able to adjust something on the screen, or they're able to like it. On the footer, you typically have a bunch of site information like terms and conditions, privacy, that kind of thing. Those are all things you want to call out. If you don't call those out, number one, you're not going to have them implemented correctly. And number two, you're going to be missing things that are absolutely essential for your site to be implemented correctly. Yes?
You just think about it at one level though at that point.
In terms of the page components, you mean?
Yeah.
They're all pretty much encapsulated by the page. So yes.
So user level, you're thinking one level. What do I want? What, you know, 'cause otherwise it can just blow up on you.
Be blown up at this level anyway. There are so many. If you just look at a typical page, there are a ton of components on it. But that's okay. And you do need to call them out. I mean, you might have to have, all sorts of static content like text or images. You have to tell or articulate what they are, or capture that. Because if not, how is someone going to implement it? So yes, we're getting into this between detail.
So at this point, if this is where developers come in and sort of they're helping you, right? Do they think this way? Like,
No.
would they go,
No.
hey, wait, you have an add to cart button, but
No.
you don't have a quantity button.
No.
You've got to get all this,
No.
every bit.
Here's the thing about
In there?
developers. Developers have sort of like a mind like a steel trap once it gets shut, he gets in.
Okay.
Okay, you know what I mean?
So this all has to get in there before the mic shuts.
Yes, exactly. So I do both. I do business analysis a bit, but I do in my career, I've done both development and QA, so testing and after development is done. And they're totally different disciplines, but that's such a good question because as a developer, when I get something that I'm supposed to work on, what I do is I look at it, I cogitate for a bit, and I develop in my head a game plan. I'm going to look at it, I'm going to figure out, and then I'm going to follow what I just figured out, and those are my marching orders. I'm just going to achieve that. And when I'm done, it's going to be perfect. We're done. So if I get the wrong information in my head,
You're going to make it perfectly wrong.
perfectly and wrong.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes. That's where QA comes in later. That's where QA comes in and says, oh, let's go back and take a look at the original view that we were supposed to be, following, what our original intention was.
Okay.
And are we achieving that or not? So that's how testing counterbalances that. But in order for testing your QA to work, we have to know what the original intention was. So that's where articulating this is even more important than just getting the developers to get it right, because the testers have to come back to be able to validate or audit the work that has been done. And they need something like this. They need a roadmap to follow.
In my experience, like if you don't explicitly put it in there, even if it seems like really common sense,
Right.
be like, why didn't you put that in there? You didn't tell me to put it in there.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it is very, very tricky because, again, just having, even if you have a really robust model in your head, because you guys are business owners, you guys are spending so much time seeking this
Right,
and
thinking about it.
thinking about it, getting a big, robust model in your head about it. How are you going to convey that to them? You might have some conversations, you might have some emails, you have some requests, you have some specific tasks that you give them. That's not comprehensive. This kind of breakdown is intended to be comprehensive and complete, and that's where you get the best chance of getting the correct thing.
And it will not look nice either.
It will not look nice.
Well, that's true. Yeah, it's very common that we're trying to get it as close as possible. Nothing ever comes across correct or perfect the first, even the second or third time typically. But we're really going to try to eliminate how bad it is. We're going to hopefully get something that's close. Without this, you're going to get something that is nowhere near close. Probably it's going to be a very big approximation to it. Yes.
So I'm wondering about at the bottom,
Yeah.
when you're getting down to those specific, which button you click and so on.
Yeah.
I wonder, I just feel a risk there of getting back to the waterfall level of detail, but you need that if you're using that approach.
Yeah.
I guess the way that I'm thinking about it
Yeah.
is that it's a when you're spelling it out that much, it tends to end up as a phone book because it's working on the assumption that the user that the product owner gets this vision, communicates everything through words up front as opposed to the dialogue on whether this is meeting their needs. So I mean, so I've been on. I was on a project where we were writing. We started out with a phone book.
Yes.
That we had some requirements people write out for us. And then we moved over, and the developers that implemented actually were using it as an agile approach. And so they were saying, well, okay, let's just list this out in much more simple terms like this and try to break it down in what do you actually need this to do?
Yeah.
And so we were able to have a little bit more, and so there was much more focus on the product demonstrations and saying this, that button is in a place that works for me or it's not, as opposed to us necessarily having to tell them up front. We won't see you for another year, so you better put the button in the right place.
Well, this is a good one. Yeah. The one thing I would say about this is it has to do with the way that typical implementation works, like how the developers want to go in and work on individual tasks. The developer might go in and, well, let me see if I can. User interactions. When you come to a web page, it's static. You're just seeing something that's there in its visual way. You have to go. And so there's going to be maybe, let's say 100 ways for you as a user to do it. So you're going to go, you're going to click on a particular field to put text in. You're going to click on a button. It's going to go and do something to the database, right? And it's going to come back. It's going to redisplay some data, right? So this is what I'm going on. And it provides a new state, right? And that's what's happening in each of these actions. You're right, it's very heavy to articulate each of these, but this is what the developer is going to be. This is called something similar to like a model controller framework. And I don't want to get too technical on it, but it basically means you start with something that's there and static. The user interacts with it. You take whatever the user did, it goes to the data, this is logic happens, and you come back with a new result to this structure. They have to implement this. So if you don't go in and detail this, they're going to kind of infer it or make it up, right? And that's a risk, right? It's better, I think, that you can to spell out what each of these interactions are so you know exactly how many there are, and you can assign them as individual tasks to the developer, right? This is leaving no room for ambiguity on the part of the developer's work. He's going to be able to say, okay, I need to take the data that's in this field, and then respond when I click on this button. I'm going to call this business logic in the back end. I'm going to adjust the database for this data and come back with this result. That's a really strong spec. That's really something solid that they can work on. So that's the trade-off. Yes, it's becoming a little bit like an encyclopedia. We have very precise marching orders for the developer with this. And I'd much rather have that than have something that's perhaps unclear or ambiguous. So when they go, they're going to do something that's approximately like this, or that isn't correct. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. It's a little hard for me to convey, but you are getting into a lot of detail. Once you get down here to the individual user interactions, you can have a lot of detail. I mean, think about all the things you can do on a Facebook page, right? There's so many buttons and links and images and stuff. There's a ton of things, but they all have to work. And same for your implementation, your systems all have to work. So, any more questions about that? Okay. There's only one more thing, and then we're kind of done with the main picture here, and that's for integration with third parties. So an example of this, unlike e-commerce, would be with the payment system, right? You have to be able to accept payment or credit cards or PayPal, something like that. You also have to perhaps integrate with shipping or shippers like FedEx or UPS. Tax is a big deal, being able to get correct tax information, right? So third-party integration is something that is also very important to be able to articulate. It's also one of the trickier ones to get correct because these kind of integrations just rely strictly on data. It's like a handshake, sort of like throwing a ball over a fence and seeing what they throw back. You have to get that pitch just right to the right velocity, they're all the right components, and if everything goes well, you get back the right result from your third party. A lot of times you won't get the right data back, and your system has to accommodate that. But what if they do not have enough credit on their credit card? You don't want your orders to go through, right? You have to accommodate that in your design. So with any third-party system, there's going to be typically one way that it works correctly, and 100 or 1,000 ways that it can blow up to accommodate the main way, plus all the exceptions. Okay. So this is it. This is sort of like the hierarchy of what you need to be able to articulate for you to be able to convey something to an engineer or a development team that will give them a good content. Epics, main functional areas, specific pages implementing those epics. On each page, the page components with the user interactions of all those various components on the page, and then third-party integrations. Any questions about this? Let's talk a bit about just what happens if you're not a technical, like company that's going to do technical stuff. My guess is that you have some sort of manual processes that you're doing, right? And the protocol also routines that. So you guys said you're not going to be implementing web app.
No, it's a product manufacturing product company.
Yeah. Okay. So what I would say is that you probably have a manufacturing process. There are distinct subparts to it, right? It goes from one kiln or one machine.
Right, all the sub-assemblies.
Yeah, sub-assemblies. Yeah, so that would be like these, right? And then for each of those sub-assemblies, you have components, right? And so for each of those, you're going to have a certain set of things that it's possible to do. Right? So that's, again, a way to map this to something that's not necessarily software. Yeah, but I don't know when you're manufacturing, it's kind of like those products. What I would say is that when you articulate it that way, you have the opportunity to look for ways to find technology to work. Like if you come in and you say, well, this is where we have the greatest risk for failure in the manufacturing process. We have the highest incidence of flaws or manufacturing errors. And so knowing that that's a bottleneck or a concern or issue, having run through this process and saying, okay, now we got this articulated, let's go through and see where are all the red flags, what are the things that screw up and put us at risk, right? We need to go through a normal manufacturing. Well, that's where you're going to be able to look for opportunities for improvement or optimization, or in my case, because I'm a software guy, I'm going to look for finding tools, existing software, that will help address these issues, whatever they might be, right? And especially if there's something that's aligned to scale. So if you're going to find something that is, if you're doing 10 widgets a day, but you can find some sort of workflow software with something, I don't know what it might be, that allows you to scale to 100 or 1,000, that's a huge win. Right? Yeah, a good example of this is for a company that started with a different cohort, and they were a company that was doing medical record analysis. And they were doing it manually, so they were doing all these medical records and coming up with huge, huge stacks of medical records, having to go through them and to basically annotate them, to come up with what everything that was important in acute patient history. And so, in looking at that, in working with them, I thought, you know what, this is a big, big bottleneck. We have a very manual process that is very hard, and really, why is it not digital? Why are you not scanning all these medical records, having it be digested through optical character recognition, having all of the keywords already extracted for you, and you're going to be able to annotate them very intelligently and quickly. So that's a perfect example of how you take something that's clearly, obviously manual, and then finding a path for technology to help you make it work better.
Was that something that they had to custom develop, or is that something that
No.
already existed in the
Well,
marketplace?
this is cool, because they were looking at doing custom development, and they've gotten a bid for like a 5-figure bid.
Right.
But luckily, super luckily, I found a package that cost $150 per seat, and it did exactly what they needed,
Mhm.
right? But that's because we sat down and went through this analysis to figure out what they needed to do. What
Do
the
they have the name of
process
whatever
was in
that
terms
was?
of this, right?
No.
So every bit is applicable for new software, as much applicable for that as it is for businesses that are not developing.
Well, then I have both potentially.
Okay,
I'm sorry,
cool.
I've been in and out.
No, it's all good.
But
Yeah,
yeah, no, I have both. But that, I would, afterwards, I'd like to find out what that software was.
sure. Yeah.
Okay.
No problem. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sure. Okay, guys, any more questions? How long do I have? I can go into more. I can dive into some more.
You've got about an hour.
I do. Oh, I'm going to bore you guys. Okay, so let me just call something out really quickly here, which is in terms of what disciplines are going to be going on here. This is where you guys are going to be functioning, right? You guys are going to know all the ethics about your business, right? This is your area of expertise. When you get into this next level of pages and page components, this is something that a designer does, right? Somebody who's like a UI UX person, right? So if you don't have any design expertise, that's okay. You can hire somebody. You can buy templates. I'm a huge fan of buying templates. Really good templates. I did one for a project I've been working on for about 2 years. I paid $8 for it. Did my prototype, loved how it worked. Went back, purchased a commercial version of it for $500 or $600. But probably in truth, I had to overlay a ton of my own work on getting the UI UX that I wanted. And but anyway, if I had to do it, it probably would have been a mid-5-figure, like $50,000 job, right? So don't let this idea that you don't know UI UX.
And what does that stand for?
User interface, user experience.
Oh, user.
Sorry, yeah. Code words.
Yeah, I knew it. I knew it was something I would understand once spelled out.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
They're considered separate disciplines. User interface is just kind of what it looks like, or what's there on the page. User experience is what the user actually does and how they how they interface with it, what they do, what their experience is using their data.
And a lot of this stuff goes back maybe to human-centered design, right?
Oh, yeah.
How do humans actually interact with these pages?
Right.
What do they expect to happen when you push? How do people move, navigate? How do they think? How does the eye read left and right? What are the cultural differences? That gets into UI, UX. So the rabbit hole goes really deep.
Yes.
You get into some of that iterative testing that we'll talk about, experimentation,
Yeah.
A/B split testing, things like that. But that really does unlock a lot of hidden revenue and margin in a lot of these models when you start. Once you have the prototype up, you start dealing with that. So
That is such a good
have you
point.
talked about MVP yet and like that?
No, let's talk about that.
that.
You mentioned what you do, how much do you throw in here? Do you throw
Yeah.
into this? And the answer is kind of maybe, right? No, you want to start out with something that's reasonably achievable and simple, right? That gets to the heart of the matter of what you're trying to implement. But at the same time, you've got to get the right stuff out there. So you do have to include a little bit of complexity. I tend to vote for making things as simple as possible because that also kind of is a bit of human engineering. If I'm confronted with something that is really complicated, I'm probably not going to engage it. So there's this differentiation that's critical between what I think is important and making something complicated and making something that actually works for the human brain and the way that we function is people, right? And so it would tend towards simplicity. Getting simplicity right is extraordinarily hard.
Yes.
You're gonna have to do a gajillion iterations to get simplicity correct. But it's totally worth it, and it's gonna align with what Tony said, which is making it much more human-like, whatever, right? It's gonna, I call it on occasion, I don't know if this is good or bad, hacking human nature, right? That's what it is, really. I mean, we are the way we are, and if you can accommodate that, or program to it, or design to it, then you're gonna have a higher level of success with whatever it is you're doing. Anyway, so we talked about their pages and page components. This is what a designer is gonna do. All this stuff below here, right, this next level down, including a little bit of the page components, so we'll just put his dash line maybe like this. All this stuff down here is what your developers gonna do.
Those are great pens.
Okay, yeah. So page components, right, they're gonna mess with the page components for sure, they're gonna implement some of the details on that. But the user interactions especially, this is exactly where your developers can be functioning, or where you want them to function, right? And then also third-party integrations, those have to happen. So you can see you got some different disciplines here. Part of the objective though, in doing all this, is you want to make this all human readable. I want to have somebody who's functioning up here at the ethic level as a business person, be able to understand what's going on down here. So I'm never going to become overly technical, right? Someone can read or understand. Same thing here with the pages and design. I mean, wireframes are great. Once you start doing some actual comps, so you see what it's going to look like when you're totally done. Those are all things that people should be able to read and look at and understand. So the objective here is not to do something, although I'm calling out these different sort of layers or levels in the disciplines, or the types of people that we deal with. In terms of what you're articulating or building, it should be something that anyone can look at and understand. Do you have a question? Okay, look, you're that's the question. All right. So let me see, what's it going to be here? What do you guys use your challenges? Do you guys think you can do ethics? Is that something that you think you feel comfortable with doing? As things stand right now, you can sort of call it the big function that there is that your business for the project has.
Is that what that means? Because I'm sorry, I wasn't.
Yeah,
It's like it's the umbrella areas that
Yeah.
you're trying, the problems you're trying to solve in your company.
Exactly, right. And
Or
so,
with whatever the technology is. Okay,
exactly.
yeah,
So
sure.
like the example that I gave you,
Right.
is that you're going to go in a shop and buy something.
Right.
But
Exactly.
there's also like customer service, there's
Mhm.
warranty stuff.
Yeah, not
There's,
that similar.
reviews, or that kind of thing. So those are all, there's like typically a main ethic, a big objective, and then smaller secondary ethics.
Mhm.
So, but yes. So hopefully you guys should be able to try something like that. What I'd like to do is go down a little bit more into ethics then. Right? This is going to, I think, get more to the heart of the matter. We're going to be able to add more detail in a way that is very helpful, but also not getting too overly complicated or burdensome. So we have to talk about scenarios, also sometimes called use cases. So a scenario is just something that has to happen. And they're typically just like you have like the main epic and secondary epics. And typically within each epic will have a main scenario or typical or critical key scenarios, and then secondary scenarios, additional things that have to happen. So one of the most common types of scenario is what they call the happy path, which is what does my site have to do when I go to it? I just want it to be flawless and looking at 80 or 90% of my user or interactions that I want it to be about. So on that e-commerce site, it's going to be going to it, finding the product, clicking the product page, adding it to my shopping cart, clicking on the checkout button, putting in my billing and shipping information, putting my credit card information, pushing the buy button, getting the order confirmation screen, getting my confirmation email. That's the happy path in the whole site, right? But there are a lot of additional scenarios that are possible. Like if you go to that product page, you can have more than one. You can have two. You can remove them. You can go from 2 to 1. You can delete the item altogether, right? Potentially from your shopping cart. Those are all scenarios that you have to detail, right? Within each page or epic. If you don't, how are they going to implement it correctly? There's no chance for that to be implemented without that level of detail, right? At the same time, again, don't want to make it too complicated. You're my checkpoint over here. Don't want to make it too complicated. So let's talk about those scenarios. These are actually going to be not only at the epic level, but at these levels as well, but we're gonna talk about them in the context of the epic level. So what you have first are those baseline scenarios. Okay? There could be more than one. So within your main epic, let's go back to an epic.
The shopping, the e-commerce,
Okay, so you have
buying, 10 different fundraising toolkits.
Okay, and, okay, so that's too similar to the comments, this would be a different one, right? You're talking about that one, but one is different, so.
Should see it.
Oh, you want to talk about one? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so this scenario would be swiping through pictures, kind of Tinder style.
Yeah, okay, cool. All right, that's great.
And they're all tagged with different ingredients so that it's saving, if you are swiping through beef images, it's going to remember that you don't like beef.
Okay, that's cool. So let's call it, there are a couple things that come to mind. You said that you're thinking your site's about discovery, right?
Yeah.
So there's probably, I'm gonna guess a browsing, just a basic browsing thing. You come to the page and you're gonna see some sort of content, right?
Well, there's a mobile app, by the way.
Well, there's a mobile app too. What is a mobile app?
Yeah.
Okay. So is it?
But same theory, right?
Yeah, is it primarily swipe driven? Like, do you go
Yeah,
ahead and
it'll
start
just
directing right away?
just show pictures of food, swipe right if you want to
Okay,
try it,
cool.
and left if you don't.
Okay, perfect. That's cool. I like that. That's neat. So yeah, win.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So it's not browsing. I was wrong. So it's not about browsing. Let's call it.
Well, you are browsing, but you're making an action based on what you're browsing.
Yeah.
Taking an action.
Yeah, I like it. Okay, so we're gonna have, let's call it browsing with, let's go ahead and call it browsing. Call it with two possible outcomes. So one is to swipe to the left.
There's actually 4 outcomes.
Okay, cool. Let's
But
talk
you
about
want
it.
to, but you want to just keep it simple for the
Well,
purpose.
no, because these are all scenarios that have to.
Okay, so, and I haven't totally fleshed this out yet, but
That's
the
good.
idea is
That's
like swipe right if you've had it and liked it. Swipe up. You haven't had it
Because you,
and you would like to try it, or you haven't had it and you didn't like it. You haven't had it and you don't want to try it.
so it's up, down, left, right.
Right, 4 options. I know that sounds complicated, but it would be, helpers would pop up and,
Okay, cool.
yeah.
Yeah, one thing that occurs to me is just that if you have like an axis like, like this is good, bad, and this is yes or something.
Right,
like
right,
that.
right.
Yeah, I know it's.
Like bad should be down.
Yeah, or something, yes.
Right, right.
So that sounds cool. I like that. That's good. I like things that create opportunities for interaction and gamification. So that's pretty cool. So I would say that within your scenario of coming to your main page on your mobile app, that these are the key 4 scenarios. You're going to be provided. They're going to be provided with some sort of content, and they're going to have these basic 4 engagements that are possible here. I would call out that there are probably also things that are going to be at the page component level here, but it's okay to articulate them both as main scenarios and at the page component level. Is as a developer, there's somebody different working at the page component level. Your designer and your developer working down here. They might not read about these scenarios in the epic, right? They're going to be looking at this detail down here, so it's okay to be articulating this. That's a really good example, though. I like it. So do you have any additional secondary scenarios, other things that they can do when they're there? Like maybe you mentioned open table?
Nothing in stone, but one would be, reserve, I mean, you could there'd be a little icon where you could flip and it would kind of look at your things you've liked or something.
Okay.
And, reserve a seat at this restaurant or something.
Okay, cool.
It's just an idea. Another one would be reports for, on the restaurant side. Let's say a restaurant wanted to see how many people liked one of their dishes.
Yes,
So reporting for restaurants to purchase.
Okay. Okay, that's cool. Yeah, so let's talk, these are baselines here. Main things, 90% of users are going to do this.
Sure.
Of those, a subset are going to do these additional tasks on a frequent or at least occasional basis. I like to call those key variants. So these are like secondary scenarios. Right. Additional things that users want to do. There are also things that users will do on very, very rare occasion, right? You still have to accommodate, right? So it might be like in an e-commerce site, they might be trying to purchase something from third world country, or you have a special for Girl Scouts, or something that is just a very rare occurrence on your site that you want to accommodate as part of your business model. So those are called edge and corner cases. Edge cases, if you're trying to the edge of the table, it means that most of the time you're functioning on the table, but occasionally you want to get to the edge. You just want to make sure you're doing the right thing to the edge. Corners are similar, that you're hitting two edges, so even less frequently, very, very rare occasion.
So I want to use the Girl Scout coupon from Mongolia.
That's right, exactly.
That's a corner case.
That's a corner case. Exactly. Sometimes this is getting into really ridiculous nitty-gritty, right? Like, who cares about Mongolian Girl Scouts?
This stuff is what kills you. And very quickly, just a quick example, we had a set of checkout characteristics on ArtFire where you would pass the data to PayPal, but PayPal requires like a 2-code state variant. Well, if you're not in a country that has the 2-code state variant, that would reject the cart. And because of the delay in the handling of that, it would tell the customer that they checked out, but then tell the seller that no purchase took place.
Oh boy.
So it was only happening like once every 3 months, but we would get this terrible situation where people are expecting product, but they never talked to them. And it was a corner case that took us a while to track down. It was only certain amounts over certain amounts of time from certain countries in certain ways.
Yes.
But this stuff, there's 100 corner cases like that that happen every week on a big e-commerce site, and you're constantly fighting these things. So you gotta
obviously
kill as many off as you can.
obviously less with an MVP, but
But some of these things, you got to think what happens when somebody goes to hit the reserve a table and it's full. Okay, that's one set of behaviors, right? Does it give them another drop down for other dates? Does that mean you have to ping an API, or they reserve the table but now they want to change it? Where's that stored?
Right.
Because that's not a happy path, but it's an edge case, right?
Sure.
Because now you're 10%, but it's 10% of those people want to go back and change the reservation, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
some of this stuff, even though it's MVP, you might want to sketch out how you'll handle that early enough on.
Yeah.
It's really not good to use your users as bug testers, I find. They don't like it.
Happens all the time, though.
They're really good at it, and they're very loud, but
One thing I have a question about
Yeah.
at this level,
Yeah.
are you thinking about should we use Amazon as a server or is something smaller for when you scale up? I mean,
No, this is once you have all this articulated, then you can think about what some of the architectural details be.
Okay.
All that will inform what those kind of decisions are going to be. Like what platform to use. A lot of people, developers or consulting firms, come to you say, "Oh, we use this stack," or we're full JavaScript stack developers or something like this. And they'll say, "Well, that's the greatest platform. Why you guys should use it." And all this. And honestly, none of that really matters. You're going to be implementing something very, very similar. I mean, occasionally it matters, but for the most part, this is what really matters.
Just get it built. Yeah.
Yeah, you're just going to put it on a standardized platform of some sort. You can hire a firm, just make it one that's relatively mainstream, that's well accepted, well adopted. You can hire developers to work on it, and you're good, right? So sort of similar to the cloud, you're going to come to a point where you realize, okay, based on our projections for like scalability and what our hardware platform is intended to be, and some of our other considerations, technical considerations, let's try to whittle down some architectural, decisions.
quick, just so everybody understands, the real value of this is a lot of folks will bid these out both locally and maybe overseas for developers, and 80 to 90% of people have nowhere near the detail to get that bid correct. So they'll say, well, I kind of want an e-commerce site, it's got to look like this, it's kind of like Tinder, and some guy from Northern India will say, oh yeah, we can do that for $5,000, and that's a total crock. It's going to cost you $500,000 and take way too long. Because you don't know what you want, and he knows you don't know what you want. So it's going to be this constant pulling of, oh, that's a change, that's a change.
Yes, exactly.
You have a really good spec doc, you can go out and get an actual bid that you can hold somebody to.
That's right. That's
In
right.
my experience, if you can map out every possible page and how you get to each page from one place
Yes.
and give it to a developer, they could probably make it work.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, probably.
But
Hopefully.
these scenarios, out of the 80 or 90% of people that don't even know what the hell they want, the remaining 10% who do have the pages and the happy path.
Yes,
They don't
that's
think
right.
about anything else.
That's right.
And that's where you lose all your money and all your time is the is the secondary scenarios, the edge cases, and the corner cases.
Yeah.
It just stacks up.
Yeah, this is gonna have to get built too. You're gonna go through and realize, oh yeah, crap, what happens if they don't log in the right way, or what if they're this type of
Right.
user, or we have really two types of users. Now we have to have a totally different set of scenarios for this second class of users. You know, restaurant owners versus, you know, eaters or whatever.
Sure. Right.
Articulate it the first time, then you have a much better chance for shot getting it. So we talked about edge and corner. There's another type, two types actually, that are related to things when they go bad. One is called negative scenarios. That classic example is basically the wrong password. One credentials. How does the site gracefully handle things when you aren't following the happy path? Right? So negative. You want to call those out as well. Another classic example would be when you're checking out, and your credit card doesn't have enough credit on it. Right? So
Checks the payment.
yeah, you want to actually not ship the item or not go through with the transaction.
Or when this is a good one because it happens a lot, when you have a software as a service product and they try to build a card and there's insufficient credit, what happens then? Is it a secondary bill attempt the next day? Is it a week? Do you suspend the account? Do you warn the account? Do you have a secondary payment method? Like, it just starts to grow really quickly, right? Because you guys are billing $44.95 a month to have access to all these videos. The card is declined. Do you take away access immediately? How long do you hold that account? Do you keep their account for a year, 10 years, forever? World of Warcraft will keep your account forever. You can always go back to the addiction. Even if you tell them to limit it, they'll still contact you a year later and go, we got all your stuff, you can turn it back on tomorrow, right? So that gets into a whole different set of, I'm sorry, I'm jumping on here.
No, it's all good. No, this is perfect.
But this stuff that's where that negative stuff gets really interesting.
Yes, for sure. Yep, negative stuff is every bit as important. Typically. So you have to start wrapping your head around it, and by capturing here, you're going to be giving yourself The last one is exception handling. That's what happens when the system actually totally craps out. You want to be graceful about it. You don't want to get a blue screen of death. Right? So exception handling is the last type of scenario that you might have. And it's always good just to throw it in there. A lot of, this is again getting back to human nature. If you come to a site and it basically blows up in your face, you probably lost that.
Oh, you remember the fail whale on Twitter?
Oh, I do.
Like that was a great, when Twitter just, it had like little birds trying to lift a whale and it said something's going wrong. And you were like, oh, that's pretty funny.
That's a perfect example, right? Of exception handling. It's perfect. That's what you want to fail. You want to think about your fail whales. I'm going to start talking about fail whales. Okay. There's only one other thing that I would add into the mix. Remember I said I don't like big, lengthy narratives? I think you have to have a little bit of narrative description. So when you're talking about each epic, you should be able to write a paragraph about it. So as you're calling out your epics, what I would do is I would write a paragraph for each of them. It's just a simple narrative explanation of what the epic is that anybody can understand. Somebody who's a business person, somebody who's a technical person, somebody who's a designer. So if you were to take away a homework assignment from this presentation today, it would be, number one, figure out what your epics are. Your main one or two, your secondary epics, make sure you're capturing all of them. Write a paragraph for each of those epics, right? Just a simple paragraph, not too big, right? 6. If you got 6 sentences, it's almost too much. 5 sentences. Now we're getting into the nitty-gritty. Write, articulate as bullet points all the scenarios for each of the epics. What are the main things that have to function within that epic? Right? There's going to be 1 or 2. In your case, you have like 4 main baseline scenarios. What are the key variants? What are the things that will happen frequently, but not all the time? They're important variations on whatever your baselines might be. What are your edge and corner cases? Rare occurrences you need to accommodate. What are the negative things you have to be able to manage properly? And what happens when the system blows up and you want to present a fail well? If you do that, you've got a really good picture of what your system needs to do. And I can read this as a person who doesn't know anything about your business. Am I totally non-technical, like up here? Am I a computer guy? I can look at this and read it and understand. It's so helpful. Now I have a shot at implementing it correctly. As a designer, now I have a chance of designing it correctly, knowing that this is your intention for your epic. Right? Does that make sense? Hopefully this helps you guys. I'm trying to figure out if it does. Main things you do, paragraph, what are the main, these scenarios, maybe this is related to workflow, right? I don't know, probably did in some way, right? You have things that are going through your manufacturing line, things that happen.
Yeah, that would be like the assembly steps.
Yeah, there's some of these steps, yeah. You have weird things that can happen in various steps and you do accommodate, right? Maybe you think that needs to get kicked out or fails a test or something, and then exception to the machine breaks. Sorry. If you can spell out all these things, you have probably a good chance of being able to actually build or manufacture the process out, or to pass it on to, let's say, an overseas company for them to implement it for you, so you're at scale. Right? If you guys can prove it out here locally, then you might need to be able, you might need to send this to a third-party manufacturer overseas. If you can spell all this out, you can have a much better chance of getting that implementation correct.
This is an excellent opportunity for any of you. I assume you're kind of done with the general.
Yeah, this is it. This is, I mean, I'm just going to mention one more thing, which is that these scenarios typically also wind up applying to the page, all these different levels. But for your purposes, I would just worry about the second couple. And then as you're working with designers and developers, you'd probably go back around and just make sure you're capturing and considering more detail in these levels, more specific. But yes, that's it.
This is an excellent example of you've got questions, what you've always wanted to know about software development that you were always afraid to ask.
Oh.
Right? Like, how does this get decided? What does that mean? There's no question that I mean, and
Yeah.
here's all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Expensive.
Between the two of us.
Oh gosh, yeah. Okay.
How
So
expensive is the house?
If you wanted
Yeah.
a simple app.
yeah. So here's the thing.
I got an ice cream truck company. What if I want an app that tells you where the ice cream truck is at any point? Is that gonna cost me a fortune or is?
Okay, so here's the thing. It could cost you a fortune or it could cost you next to nothing. And the way it costs you a fortune is you go and you hire a very expensive consulting firm, right, to go and spend $50,000 in UI UX and to hire a team of, onshore developers that are all earning six-figure salaries and they're going to take 6 to 9 months to build out your cool little app or whatever. So that's your like $1 million project right there. Or you can do what I did for my own app, which is because I'm a developer, I built everything myself.
Well,
And
that's not an option.
it took me 2 whatever, right? And I've only done the web version. I haven't even done the mobile version yet. So that was kind of free, right? And then there's
Not free, not free at all, your time is $1 per hour, right, man?
it's probably I don't know. You've seen
Yeah.
the video, so it looks like probably I'm going to say a $500,000 software job.
Yeah, I would.
When I have the mobile version out, it'll be like no one will know it's one person.
UI UX is solid. It's
Yeah.
an easy programs. It'll have a lot of third-party stuff. Yeah, it would cost.
Yeah.
I would bid at least that.
Yeah, you're talking like yes, me.
So go get to the cheap part.
Okay, cheap. Here we go. Okay, so here's another scenario. I have to say, Tucson is becoming a bit of a revelation for me because I grew up here. I had to leave because there weren't really software jobs or anything. I've come back, and there's this nascent like startup scene that's starting to happen here, right? There are companies trying to do stuff, and one of them was a company that was officing. I think where did you come up? One Creek, were those guys?
One Greek, they went to Core, but they're obviously upstairs. I don't know.
Yeah. And so anyway, these guys had heard about me through a networking event, and I started helping them go through this process, right? With the objective of them being able to come up with a blueprint and to offshore it to a team. And so they were able to do it for, I'm going to say a dime on the dollar, basically, roughly, versus the cost of what it would have been if they had to go through a formal development process like this. That was for their MVP. They have subsequently gone through to a second release, which was much more involved, right? But just getting to the MVP, they're able to do it. I mean, 2 guys who were bootstrapped, they were able to do it.
The other way to think about it is people are often like, I want to build an app. For what Adam's doing, an app makes some sense.
Yeah.
Most of the time, an app is not necessary.
Web app.
A mobile web app was a better play.
Yeah.
You just want people to know where the truck is.
Yeah.
You got a mobile website that has a GPS tracker on your truck that's a third-party integration. You
Just share it all the time with Glimpse.
For $500 or $1,000, you won't really get that done.
And
There's
there's
also-
also look part though.
There's also like
They'll have
15,
to go to Isabella's truck on their phone.
well, there's so many places where you can build a web mobile app, downloadable mobile app. Like Good Barber is one of the services. You just pay like a monthly fee and you can design an app. You can download it, but it's all
They're
paid.
not super scalable. They're not going to give you the depth, but for what you're trying to do, it's similar price.
Yeah.
At least to begin, for the beginning.
Right.
So I have to say about the one because they're probably the hardest working, most focused team that I've ever worked with. I mean, having worked with all these major, $1 billion companies and all these professionals earning like 6-figure salaries, having teams of developers and QA people and project managers and business analysts and stuff. Those projects are typically total train wrecks, total disasters. These guys, these are their focus and drive, and they're also talented, right? They were able to do this. They're able. I can only take credit for coaching them. I helped them for 20 hours to build this out. I did not manage the development process. I didn't help them with QA. I helped them with none of the engineering. I just helped them set this up. So
And that took 20 hours.
it took 20 hours of coaching. They
So-
worked on it for a lot.
What was it, what is their business? What do they do?
Well, they have a social network for the returns event.
Oh, yeah.
Facebook 3.0.
Yeah, it's like a white label social network. So anyway, so if you are able to apply that same level of focus and drive and effort, I mean, my part of this, I did my typical slave and skill rate. I think for the 20 hours it was well less than $1,000.
Oh my gosh.
In billable time. Right?
Well, then you gave it away.
Kind of, yeah, yeah, I guess so. So anyway, I'm happy to do that for other small companies, that are here in town, because I want to help all these startups be able to have a
So
chance to shine.
that leads me to the next question, because you said offshore it, so which means go to India to have it
Yes,
written is what you're meaning by that, right?
Or Morocco or
Morocco.
Bangladesh or
Okay.
someplace.
So my understanding is, having spoken to a bunch of different people about this.
Yeah.
That's not the kind of interface that the average American small business owner is going to be able to have with that company
Yeah.
in
Sure.
wherever it is, right? You need
Yes.
someone to be the interface between you and them, no, yes,
Okay,
no?
well, here's the thing. You need to interview those companies. You need to
Right.
find like 20 of them that
Right,
you think might be able to do the work. You go on to a
Yeah.
consulting site, you'll see their portfolio, say that looks good, they did something similar, they got good reviews, that kind of thing.
so you're saying we could do that if we go
Yes.
through the interview process?
Yes, you go through the interview process, and some
Okay.
of these you want to do right away is you want to identify how their, say, language skills, right?
Right.
Because you could be talking to somebody and
It's lost in translation.
totally lost, it's so hard. I worked with a ton of offshore teams, I worked with offshore teams in Japan, in India,
Mhm.
where else? I think those are the main two places,
Right.
actually, right? But the thing is that especially with the Indian teams, I've always had to adjust to their accents.
Right.
And it takes me about 3 months.
Right.
And after that, I totally understand everything they're saying. For the first 3 months, it's a little bit hard because you're on a international phone connection
Yeah,
and
it's
it's
not
speakerphone or whatever. It's a little bit hard. But you have to interview these companies for their communication skills, right? You have to be able to communicate with them.
Yes,
You have to interview them for their ability to understand this. You
right,
pass this along to them. If they are asking questions, that's a good sign. If they just come back and say, "Oh, we can do this for $5,000,"
Right.
that's a bad sign.
Yeah,
Right.
That's a
Well,
bad sign.
like there's a gentleman I just met at Tech Junction when
Yeah.
we were there, whenever that was, that just last week? I don't know, my weeks are so long.
Yeah.
He was talking about, not only does he do that interface with India, but he's like, we specifically go to this town in India, our family people, and they're not gonna leave their family. So they're working, they don't have the same turnover, so when your project takes 9 months, the guy that you had started the project with has already jumped to another ladder at another company because
Right.
they've got the system down of where they're trying to go with their careers.
Yeah.
Which is, great on them, except if your project takes too long, you're actually having to go back to ground zero. So that was his whole platform for selling his company,
That's interesting.
was the fact that he's choosing this, he's got his programmers are in this one specific town in India that's
Gosh, okay.
family oriented. And I'm
That's
like, oh
interesting.
my God,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
thought of that is scary.
Yeah.
But the question is that necessary to get a price point that's manageable for most of us?
No, I don't think it is. And partly, one of the ways you can avoid that is a couple ways. One is by having the work be paid for, right? If you want to be able to say, hey, you don't want to pass it on and say to somebody, we're not going to give you a chance to review it or to get it as a deliverable until we're done with the whole app. A lot of companies will do that. They'll just say, we're going to deliver something to you tomorrow. Instead, if you manage it page by page, and you get to see as you're going along, is it getting done? Is it correct?
Right.
And you want them to provide so frequent releases that you can review, like maybe on a weekly basis, maybe even on a daily basis. And also, you want to have it to be totally transparent. You want the source code.
Right,
You want it to be
yes.
implemented in a way that is using a standard platform that not only this team, but a team that
Well, that was
is
my question. What are those codes today?
there are tons of different platforms that people use. JavaScript, single stack development is very popular. Rails this is a very popular platform.
Okay.
I'm thinking in terms of web development, there are a ton that are mobile specific. You have both native.
Well, I'm actually
And
looking
web-
for an internal software program. I mean, the web stuff is not, I mean, it's.
Yeah.
I'm looking
An
to
internal
create,
web app would actually be really good.
I was going to say,
it's possible,
a
but.
lot of internal apps are also web apps.
They are, yes, they are, which is the way they're going, but it has to have a database, it's because it's medical records as well.
Yeah.
So there's
I need
that,
HIPAA compliance.
there's HIPAA
Yeah.
compliance, which is
Yes,
something
yes.
that's a factor for me.
Yeah.
Some other things
Sure.
around that too, so
Sure.
I don't like to have those sorts of things in the cloud, so to speak.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So I have things housed on my own server, so
Yeah.
I haven't gone web with
Yeah.
it.
Well, here's what you need to do before you make decisions about platform or,
Yeah,
kind
I
of
was
thing.
just curious, yeah, to go through all that.
What those requirements are, because then you can make sure you're getting a good solution that meets all those
Yes,
needs.
I know.
But I would also say that in my experience with the overseas development team, it's good to have someone here who can do code review and QA.
Well, that's why I was asking,
Yeah.
because I mean, I know some people, and obviously now we know you,
Yeah, yeah.
but you have to make
It's a
sure
lot
you
less
speak the same,
expensive to have someone review code than to
than
write
to
it.
write it code, yeah.
And
Yes.
somebody who goes, you know what, this is really bloated and full of security holes, and these guys are just, this is copy pasta. I know this is from
Yeah.
like 10 other websites.
Right,
Yeah.
That, you just need someone here to go, yeah, this isn't, don't accept this, right?
Right.
This is what they should do differently.
That's correct.
And send it back and say, look, guys, this is not, we want lean, elegant, clean, safe.
Or you
But
find,
you know
or
what
you find
codes
these
are-
people on like Upwork and something.
Yes, yeah, just go to any of the.
I mean,
yeah,
they typically have like reviews that are.
they will.
Yeah.
well, that's what he was
Reviews.
just saying,
Yeah.
a minute ago, but even that is too much probably for me, at least right now, I mean, I feel like I would have
You
to.
can totally do it. Trust me.
No, it's not that I'm incapable. It's not that I'm incapable. I'm very capable. I have zero time.
Oh, I
I
understand.
got
Zero time.
300 plates spinning in the
Yeah,
air.
I understand.
So that's really, it's in terms of
Yeah.
priority, I have to let a bunch of other plates
I
break.
totally get it.
So,
I was just gonna, we talked about like interviewing for like language skills, basic communication skills,
Right.
ability to read your spec and to digest it and ask intelligent questions.
right,
That's a big plus. Give them a sample page to work on, like a simple homepage or something, and ask them, pay them, or I'll be able to do it for low cost or free, a few $100. See what that deliverable looks like.
right.
Just experiment with that company and see, did they deliver? Did I have a good experience working with them on that one single page?
Got it.
Send it out to 5 different companies, your top 5 or whatever,
Right.
and see how it works
That's
with
a
them.
good, that's a good idea.
The other thing is when you look at the portfolio and somebody says like, we built this website, and you look at that, you're like, wow, this is exactly what I need. Call the company who owns that website and ask them.
Yeah.
Because the number of Indian contractors who claim that they built Artfire, there's like 12 of them.
Uh-huh.
And they're like, oh yeah, we built Artfire. I'm like, I've never talked to you. It's all coded in the US.
I've seen that too.
And so people call me and say, well, have you worked with so-and-so? Because they said they built your site. I'm like, no, not at all.
Right.
I would run away. They're lying
Yeah,
to you, right?
that is correct. And I had a similar experience. I bought a template for my own project, which is kind of a discovery thing also. But anyway, it was a resume template actually that I thought, I can totally attack this or adapt this for my own project. But it was for a designer, like a designer resume. And what I discovered is that a lot of people were purchasing this template so they could pass it off as their own work as designers. Because
Interesting.
it's a beautiful implementation. It's really brilliant. And so
Yeah.
there are hundreds of people who
Yeah.
purchased the
They're like,
template.
look what I did.
Look what I did.
Yeah,
You just have to do a search on the site of the template, any key part of it, and you'll see hundreds of people claiming to have done that.
right. Yeah,
The other thing that I think is important is that there's a lot of work up front on this. But as Ed said, this is a living, breathing thing.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like a pet. It's going to occasionally pee on the rug. It's going to need to go out. You got to get it groomed.
Yeah.
There's just, the work is really never done because say you get this beautiful integration with Instagram and Instagram deprecates half the
Right.
API next week.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, crap, you got to rebuild on the fly, right? So the work is never really done. There's some kind of cleanup and changes that have to happen. That's right. For a long time.
And that's why I want to think about that before I even start. And like I said, most of my stuff is for more internal use right at the moment. It's not.
That's
I
okay.
can't imagine there's not some off-the-shelf solution for you.
I know you say that every time, and like one of these days we will
I
actually
do
have that
want
coffee.
to see it.
One of these days we'll actually have coffee because if you can find me one.
Before you haven't looked for it, figure this out.
Oh, I have. I've
Yeah,
been
right.
doing it for 20 years. I haven't written it all down, but it's in here.
Write it down,
Yeah,
please.
Write it down.
I know. I'm done with this.
You have to convey it to somebody who can then.
Right, absolutely.
So-
No, I think that someone took some of my ideas and tried to, and made some of those things that exist today, frankly, because I talked to so many people about it back in the day.
Yeah.
But anyway, but they still haven't made it right, they haven't made mine,
Well, there you go.
you
Yeah,
know,
so
so
there's
there might be a
opportunities.
reason for that. so.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
try to do that.
That
too.
overly
Nope.
complicated verbose one.
You talked about QA. I just want to come back to QA for a moment because One of the things you can do with this is once you have the scenarios baked out here, right? And also especially like page components of the user interactions, all you have to do QA is put 2 magic words in front of each of these, each of your scenarios, each of your page components, or each of your user interactions. You have to verify that or confirm that. So if one of your key interactions is when you swipe up that it's bad, just confirm that when I swipe up, it's considered bad. From when I swipe down, it's doing this. This provides you with a checklist for doing, or a punch list for doing QA.
So
Right?
verify,
You
and what was the other one?
confirm that.
Confirm,
Yeah,
okay.
verify that or
Right,
confirm
right,
that.
Mhm.
So it's super valuable to have this independent review of everything that's been delivered or implemented. But you can do it yourself. I mean, it's not, it's a bandwidth thing, of course, but if you can articulate this and you can understand all of this, all you have to do is pull it into a spreadsheet, 1 line for each scenario, 1 line for each page component, 1 line for each user interaction. Just put the word confirm that or verify that, and a column that says pass fail on it, and you have your QA script to follow. Right? So you can verify and confirm that all of these things are working the way you expect. All of the baseline scenarios, all the edge and corner cases, all of the negative scenarios, all of the exception handling.
Developers love to get this.
Oh, yeah. But
Because
it's,
they don't want to have to talk to you to figure out what you want.
and advertisers want a creative brief, like there's a version for every industry.
Right.
The creative brief, the
Yeah.
tech one.
So I mean, even, and I've taken some of the stuff that, since I've started working with that, even at our farm, we did a pricing change. And we now have a 70-line account. If you go from this account down to that account, this has to change, these 17 things have to change in this way. If you go from this account down to that account, these 16 things have to change in this way, right? And I put that in front of the developers and they're like, this is perfect. This is almost coded. We just need to do if this, then these things happen, right?
Yes.
Then check these and then verify, right?
Yes.
Is there a good flowchart software to help you with that? 'Cause that
Use mind mapping.
Yeah, mind mapping. Oh, do you use mind mapping? Because I
I
love.
like to break these down into mind maps.
Yeah.
And then once you're done, you want it with a hierarchical
Right.
outline that looks like you typed it like the outline with indentation and,
Right.
like bullet points. So I use FreeMind. You guys.
Free Mind, is that what you use?
Yeah, it's available for Windows and for Mac. It's totally open source. So, pretty easy to use. I like it. So, any other questions about crazy software development? Who's scared of software development? We shouldn't be scared.
I'm scared of the cost and all the horror stories. I mean, there's a lot of horror stories out there.
So it's going to, without this, the reason why it's a horror story is because without this, how are you going to become close? You talked about like it being like somebody said something like something about something within like peeing in the room or whatever.
Yeah, right.
Peeing in the room. So let's say you're herding cats, right? They're going to be peeing and pooping on occasion. You're going to hire the offshore development team to, this is a typical scenario, to help arrange the cats, you get them all into kennels, get everything nice and structured so you have your pet store. They're going to bring in a giant elephant who's now going to poop everywhere. So not only are they not going to organize your cats into your pet store, you're going to wind up with this giant, massive elephant that's going to crap everything. Give them good marching orders for organizing the cats.
I like the idea of giving them a page. I mean,
Yes.
that's brilliant right there. Before you sign a contract for $15,000 or more, I mean, because they're really, I mean, I've had some serious quotes, $15,000 to $20,000.
Yes.
Is like a low end.
Yes.
Me too, so that's, most of the guys I know run web design sites won't touch it for less than that.
That's
There's
right.
lots of people do WordPress or Squarespace or one-offs or whatever, but
Yeah, I'm talking about
If you
the
do
software.
custom
I mean,
development,
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
for a piece of software that's custom for my business.
Right.
But
You
that's,
know?
isn't that why you want investors and stuff? I mean, that's pretty standard, right?
depends on how complicated the software is, it can get a lot more expensive.
Well, but you're agreeing to buy that without knowing.
Right.
It's like a home remodel. You don't know what's gonna happen once they pull up the rug.
So here's what you should do. One thing you can do. There are a couple ways to handle that kind of contractual arrangement.
Uh-huh.
One of them is to have milestones and say, when you do this behavior, this epic, then we'll pay you this amount, and you do this
Right.
one, do this amount.
Right.
What you want to do, that's one way you can approach it. The other way is to have there be a final payment that is contingent on it working, yes. So the whole testing thing, like that I mentioned, the confirm thing becomes your audit for it that is conditional for the payment to be completed.
Yeah,
Okay?
That's lovely. And is that fairly standard these days?
You should make it standard.
Okay.
If you're not doing it that way, then you should do it that way.
Right, okay.
And it's like this, if you think about like buying a car, right? if you're going to buy the car and somebody delivers something and it's just a chassis, do you have a car?
Right.
Isn't it usable? That could happen with software development. You might get something that comes with a transmission and chassis and part of the powertrain, and you say, your software is completed.
Right.
But it's not.
There's no tires.
There's no tire. It's not a full functional car. That's what you're paying for.
Right.
So that's what you have to call it out in your contract, that upon
Nice.
delivery, that it has to be a fully functional car that does all this stuff.
Got it.
Has all these epics implemented with all these scenarios, all these pages, all these page components and user interactions and third-party integrations. Because if it doesn't do that, you don't have a car.
And so from the
And
other
the
side of
Q&A
it,
piece,
from
right? You
the,
do the Q&A piece, so it comes back to you.
I think you can do it when you come back. You know this well enough, you can separate. We can't do the code level where you
Right.
can go underneath the code. You can test it functionally. You can go in and say, hey, do all the epics work? Do all the pages have all the stuff you need? Kind of go through and do these user interactions on each page. Widget things, text,
Right.
does it come back with the right data?
from the other side of it, from the side that Ed and I work in the contracting side, right? So if you build this out and you don't include everything, and we have a contract, and you come back and say, oh, you know what, I want to change this and add that, and I really thought you would just figure this part out, and I don't like, all of those words are just like opening up your bank account.
That's right.
Because every time you say, you know, I was really thinking, we're
Yeah.
good, all right, that's, $100 an hour, that's $12
Yes,
minimum.
oh my gosh, yes, exactly.
So this is cheapest
Yes, to
to walking through all of it, because once you're in, and it's never gonna be exactly this, there are gonna be some changes, and you wanna minimize it, because it's really expensive once you're out.
Yes, oh my gosh, yes.
And there's probably some template out there already that exists to fill in the blanks for this sort
No.
of thing. Not like a creative
This is your
brief, no?
template,
So
so
that's
this is
it.
your-
So-
take a
okay,
picture.
so, business plan for you, right, market the, or,
Oh, yeah.
you know what I mean?
I thought about making it into like a methodology where, but really,
Yeah.
there's no market for it in Tucson except for helping smaller companies and
Right.
projects, which I'm super happy to do.
Right, right.
I'm sort of taking all of 20 years of being like lashed and beaten and whipped by all these corporate projects and make it available to you guys for free, basically, right? Or just I'm happy to help consult, right? Just to meet with you guys and to help you get on the right path, no charge. If you want to hire me, I'll do it on a sliding scale and make it as cheap as I can.
Yeah, so I think you're some of our mentors
Yeah,
in this
absolutely.
group.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I'll be mentoring.
So can we make an appointment with you before we leave?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I have a little weird situation, tons of time, but hardly any availability, because I'm sort of stuck. It's a long story.
I mean, you kind of hit on it with like a main one or two things you want to do, but I know that, when I've been involved with like ERP implementations and stuff, a lot of times people just get, not the developers, but the people that want to use the software, they overly complicate it.
Yeah.
And then they throw it at the developer, and then the developer, and it just blows up.
Yeah.
So I think it's like a really key thing is that you gotta keep it simple,
Yes.
just because it's gonna get complicated anyway.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, I would, there's some really good guidelines that you talk about, like, pretty much any site, especially like e-commerce, like you only have like so many clicks or so many page views to get that happy path. You want to make things as sleek and streamlined as possible. The problem with having a complicated business model in your head is you want to make sure that it's somehow captured or implemented in your final software solution. And I think that's usually something that's going to result in something that's less successful. It's something that's super simple, right? Focus on the main scenarios, right? Focus on the baselines here, right? And key variants. If there's some critical agent corner cases, put them where they belong. Maybe in the footer square. Don't elevate everything into one big, everything is equally important, right? Think about what your critical path is through the site. And that should inform your page design, right? What your page components are, again, keeping it very simple. Making sure that you have one main epic and not a whole bunch of fractured epics that you're just going to go through. I thought I was coming to a site to buy, documents or something. And now I'm seeing that there's all this other stuff. It's not good, that's not it.
It's a really common, we call it founder syndrome, right? Which is, I have all this stuff in my head, all these amazing things that I know are gonna work, and we need to do all of it all the time, right? And even, we're working on this project 11 together, and Ed's even like, do we really need to do that in the MVP? And I'm like, no, just be aware that I wanna do that down the road, but
Yes,
let's
yes.
not focus on that, we just start shaving it off, right?
Yeah.
But it's really easy to just start building this super complicated thing,
Yeah.
and I guarantee you, your brilliant business idea for how the software will work will not survive the first user hitting the page.
Yeah.
The first user will surprise you. And you're like,
Yes.
what in the hell are they doing? you'd be like, everybody's clicking over here instead of the button.
Yes,
Why are they clicking on this picture? And then you have to try to figure out, it's the human-centered design. Why is that happening?
Yeah.
How do I adapt my software? Because if they want to click there, what are they trying to get, right?
Yeah.
But you don't want to build this super robust, complex thing that's your brilliant castle in the air,
Yeah.
because it's all going to change.
Yeah.
So you want the minimum thing you can get to get in the water and go, oh, that's surprising. Like,
Yeah.
no one wants documents. They don't want video. Well, shit, we spent a year writing documents, right?
Yeah. See, there
You don't want to do that until you know for sure, right?
Yeah.
Because nobody likes to read, nobody likes to watch Netflix. So,
Yeah.
right?
I have to say that for my own project, I wrote all these rules. I did not do any of this. That is why it took me 2 years to do it, and part of the reasons why. And what I learned was something that looks beautiful. I bought a template, right? And then I adapted it and all this stuff. But the real test has been, because I'm just now launching it as a beta, is putting it in front of the actual customers, right? And in a way that it's probably much more refined or elevated than a typical MVP, because I've taken all that time. But I'm still getting the same kind of feedback, right? So getting the kind of feedback from people that are actually going to be using it and seeing, you assume like, oh God, it's so brilliant and simple. They only have to click here and then do that, and they're done. And then I put real people on the site, and they're like totally doing something else or not understanding that they're supposed to do that. It's like,
It put me on a site, and I was like,
there's a button. He's
pushing
pushing
stuff.
something button.
why isn't this doing this
It
thing?
looks like a giant button. A giant button on the homepage. And I was like, it's not a button. It's still not a button. I just wanted to highlight it so it stands out from the background. It looks like a giant button. And you know what I did? After that meeting, I turned it into a button. So when you click on it, it acts like a button now in case anybody thinks it's a button.
Because I'm there punching the screen. Why is this not clicking?
Exactly. So that's a perfect example. Retention versus actual outcome, and then adapting, the work. So accommodating what people actually do. Yeah, they're going to use your product or something.
If you guys are working on software stuff, Ed is one of your advisors.
Yeah.
Make sure you sign up for office hours.
Yeah.
Saturday at 10 we'll be here. 7:30 if you want to hike. It's a great resource, and I really appreciate you coming in. 'cause
Sure.
So do you,
This will save you millions of
you don't
bucks.
have to sign up things. Well, she will. She can do another next week.
Sure.
And borrow a heavy word from other guys.
Okay.
I'll let you know. I didn't realize that.
I get it. Like that.
Or whatever, right? So.
You know what your visit today, Tommy? The next cohort, we visit every couple of the first 2 weeks.
Well, they see it. They do not have anything to do with it.
Yes, moving over to South today, just
Oh, you did? That's pretty cool.
Oh,
Really?
but I had a lot of friends, like,
Yeah. She says she uses this term like solution-based.
Yeah, that would be.
It's hard to work now.
Okay.
We don't really do
Yeah,
that.
anyway, he's been
We
doing.
build better tools to make it
I was
easier for
trying to figure out the
everybody.
first class of
That's-
that, because I think St. Gregory
that's what that
also
table
first.
Right, the table that Crash on, it's a
And
solution.
then university, I thought St. George was St.
He was
Gregory.
83.
Yeah.
They've been there, I'm like,
I
Totally
got
compromised.
it.
I got it. It makes so much sense. Like, you guys are on to something so
Yeah.
big, right?
So
Just cut through
we,
the crap and say it, right? So.
Yeah, that's what was gonna kill.
Oh, man, that's really not
Are you
good.
here?
Yeah, you should have seen Justin today. He was like, I have not done this since middle shop in high school. He was just like grinding around there, sparks flying everywhere.
Oh, you know what? That is.
Well, and it's so rare.
I'm wondering if
So you're standing, she's standing like.
Well, I think I see.
Yeah, I think there's
It's
different, like,
like,
testing is what people apply it at all.
Free.
Yeah,
If it's a buffet.
Yeah.
Now it needs more.
Just
Oh, man.
we're testing the product.
Thank
So,
you.
yeah,
I know
I didn't want to say
Sell
that.
the product.
So, yeah, it's like you're-
No, no, I-
It's
It's not on this one, I mean, like, it didn't give you. Yeah, maybe because it's off the
It
ground.
helps me, it helps figure out how to
Well,
sell
and I
more
always
European
felt that way
products.
too,
So,
but-
walk through that, like, need to be there.
It was on their website.
It's like the whole franchise.
Oh, I was
is
thinking it was
unlocked.
at like the 31st at 3.
Yeah, no, good luck tomorrow.
And I have this is a little person that's worked.
It's come a long way.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm.
Yeah, because he was buying a house and.
Yeah, as long as I got people emotionally engaged. Not
Well, and it's not just the franchise. It's the franchise.
Because there's just so many different ways to spin the numbers, you know?
It's
So
profitable.
50 million people are currently paying
That's the key.
$106 million an hour.
Yeah.
Sure.
I was just making money when I sell it. I make more money when I advertise my
Yes,
experience.
exactly. So
I mean,
You know what really, I want really bad money to make. And we haven't talked about that. Like this slide was your circle of stress.
Oh, this one.
Because I think it's hilarious,
Yeah.
and I think everyone sees
It's fun.
Yeah.
everyone
Yeah.
sees the
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Everyone relates, you know, you can.
That's what the company said.
jokes about, you know,
High-end stores.
Could be diabetes.
Wait, you know,
Yes. I guess diabetes is not.
I see this is what it's.
And the other part,
I live and you still are limited.
all day, all
You could be screwed. I've given out 1,000, I've given out 600 ice creams now.
Oh, I need some, I ran out.
Yeah.
You know, and that originally, our employees, from the health department, shut me down. Employees said, "Close up and sink." There goes my non-crazy truck.
Yeah, right.
So then I was like, nah, I was all bummed that, well,
So
that.
where'd you move when you moved here?
That's the greatest thing ever. So then the trick was,
What about that?
so then the trick was huge. So they don't really,
And then it's been about
You should talk with kids.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, it's like Chancellor.
I did.
No, it's
very.
Read what you said.
And it's something like 3 out of 5 things.
But it's
Oh, you see
also,
the Google buses?
it makes you feel.
Oh.
It's a half a punch.
Oh, look how dainty they are.
It's crazy, like through the condition, you know, the
I
whole.
saw when people are like, every now and then, for that little thing, they just go, come back if you're hungry. Like,
Oh.
and they never come back.
Is it?
Then I'm gonna, this was at this one.
Oh, it's true, yeah, no.
I swear, she's like, and I'm like,
But
I don't know how you do it. Oh, man. She's not even terribly sick. I don't know how anyone can get
Sure.
Right.
Thanks, man. Really appreciate it. No, I would love this document to go far, because I'm not kidding you. It's fun. And it's 60 calories or something. It's like, all right, you go from a $10 account up to. These are the 27 things that affect. This goes up, this goes down, this changes, that's a percentage, like, you know, all the way down. You go from this
Yeah.
account up or down
Yeah.
for each account, all the way across.
No, this is great. I like it. Nice job representing it. You'll do great tomorrow.
yeah, so I just wanted to try to clean that up. This is where I started, like, I call it everybody. Because I was getting desperate. But, you know, I think it.
Yeah, good.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much.
Effectively, so.
So that's fine, there you go.
Fly around the country, Yeah, so it's
I like that. Never thought of choosing like
flexible and helps people.
never food. I didn't care about those ways. That's what I wanted to do. She must be inside there, so we're good.
Well, I'm gonna be one, I'm here.
11:30.
Yeah, let's do
And then,
Think of it now.
11.
Right. I'm set up.
So I
was actually gonna ask
Right. Cool, 11 a.m. on Friday.
Yes.
go around the interface.
Here, a key. All right.
Oh, I have you on my schedule for Thursday at 9:30 meetings, but I wasn't sure if I should call that or correspond.
It feels like there's a
Yeah,
lot
and in,
Norway,
when they use all the natural stuff in the.
Because I wasn't sure what we were talking about.
Oh,
I know, that's my point. Yeah, I don't have the agenda in mind, it's in front of me, but it's wondering if I should wait until I had it. I'll figure it out later.
Yeah, but maybe how you can draft.
Yeah, but.
Right, well, no, exactly, well, that's why, but we haven't until the 13th. So it's more of your translation.
Use all the time you can get. It doesn't cost you anything.
Well, you're talking about, this is the thing that,
One of my favorite restaurants.
I don't
Anyway,
Well,
it's
it's
just
just
a restaurant that was kind of like a it's gonna hit it's good. Probably like 800. There are running to the level.
What really stood out. Something like that, because that way you can track it.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, because you managed to fit like 30 demand of like 600 in 3 weeks. That's just the video. You know, we weren't quite hitting it, and then all of a sudden, boom.
For, it's like $30 to $40.
I actually, part of it is we watched this happen every week. You get people who get frustration.
But I love what
Oh, yeah.
they've done
And
because
then
it's
something breaks and it creates
just
this
this
like,
idea.
that's
There's a lot of things.
every 10 minutes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
What you heard last night,
Yeah.
all these people come out of it.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, I talked to 8 people.
Yeah, so it's.
Every single one of these guys.
Yes. I'm sure you got it.
Yeah.
Just illegally based.
And it's not just because of us, I don't remember. It's like this little pause kind of happens before retooling.
Well, and I've done this kind of thing. Changes of mind.
should have brained up something.
You know, because like.
I'm gonna try to be there on Saturday, FYI.
Okay. I will not be there tomorrow.
Not be there tomorrow. Okay.
So can you be here tomorrow?
What?
For 1 million cups for presentation?
Oh, for my thing.
Yep.
That's okay. That's right.
Can I erase this?
You guys
Take
saw it.
pictures, take
But
pictures,
anyway,
take
so,
pictures.
when I was in,
Sounds good, man. All right, great, thanks.
they put me through a program where you would go to. And I was doing it for 2 weeks in the summer, so you do an intensive program like this, and then all year long you work on.
What's that? I saw that you texted.
And then.
Read the text. I saw something about forms.
That's how
You
I.
should look, there's a really awesome pitch deck in that template that I was looking at, it's really good, I think you like it.
Okay, cool. For what? For startup?
Yes.
And I was.
How'd it go?
Great.
I don't think-
I don't know what to do.
Remember it.
Right, exactly.
This is the second time.
And that was.
Everything I've ever heard was that it was great.
Other various things along the
Hopefully
way.
it's
So this
not.
is
I just-
for each iteration, but even within the weeks right now,
So
it's
sure it's valuable.
yet again.
Also, in my mind, terribly
How's
blind.
having been.
Anyway, all right.
All right.
See you later then.
I wish I
Thank
could
you, sir.
You bet. All right.
trying to remember them.
More to follow up on.
Sure, oh yeah, no worries. I'm gonna have more time probably after April 1st. My
Remember I
sister
told
is
you like
like-
we're doing this intense technical stuff in the show, like so much easier.
Yeah.
And we've kind of taken away from the next one.
You'll have.
Yes.
Make up for-
Yeah. I will be. So I think it is. Talk about that and do the. All right, see you later.
Right. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for your time today. Right.
And then say, okay, what we're gonna do the next 10
Mhm.
minutes is build each one of these.
Right. Well, right, and this customer stuff is gonna go in this
Yeah,
line.
yeah.
Yeah, so there's a
Because
correlation.
it was all correlated in the syllabus, but you have to just kind of trust that it has a reason, and so we're gonna really use it for.
Yeah.
So I know we really didn't have a chance to
So we're
talk.
getting there.
And I don't know what your.
We iterate.
Yeah, well, absolutely. There's no question. And then it's you probably, on the other piece, there's a couple of other things that I would add because, and this is just me being.
But I do want to talk.
I
I
don't
want
know
to, you know,
to what
so let's keep it 5 minutes.
Funds and the financial value.
So, I mean, my feeling is that.
I understand.
I pushed, I immediately, you know, I was like, so what do we do next?
I was like,
And there was like,
that's what's in my calendar.
So,
I'm like,
what-
the only thing, the
So-
answer is we
in my
have to
day, unless you go
this
family vacation. Like, you know,
Right.
some stuff happens. But
So there's
regardless of what goes on the syllabus,
it's,
the point of the story is.
it's,
You know,
build a
you
center,
understand the
and then once we have
And
something
I don't think
demonstrable.
people always.
I was trying to pull forward is
My feeling is that it's not really.
You know what I noticed in
Right.
this meeting?
Construct from there.
Mhm.
It's literally waiting to die.
Oh, absolutely.
You want to change the world.
Did you hear
I
what I said?
know.
It's like, in 15
She just wants
years,
to
I
talk
hope I'm gonna be up there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right,
like,
yeah.
that's a good place.
I'm trying to create Nirvana.
Trying to fix the broken US
Money
government.
that's appreciated.
Hey, just let you know, I'm gonna do it.
I have all the faith in the world.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have, it's gonna
Yeah,
create
so it's
a
challenging.
plague-like happiness thing.
Am I misreading?
Well,
Really,
so-
I
want to catch some of that.
In the social equation, we always tell me that you can either change the world or run a business, but you can't be both until tomorrow. She's like, tell me.
I just stick it out.
That's good, that's good.
Well, you know, there's a lot of companies have done some really great stuff.
Yeah.
with things.
It's just nice.
It's super great. Everything, all arrows point to, that's what everybody
I don't really
wants.
think that.
And like, one of my other like was, he got me to say out loud, well, it's a strategy. But he felt bad. because I said,
You know, you sometimes you have to use the buzzwords.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So-
So it's like, okay, I
So
get it.
I'm trying to think of it a little differently, but it's
But
really.
it is, so it's a well motivated,
And I don't really know how.
non-hippie strategy.
So yeah, for Thursday, you can go on the phone generally, let's get together and figure it out.
Yeah.
It's a slide deck, you can talk about it, whatever.
Okay.
Um,
I feel confident that we'll pick something out of your brain.
You know,
That's good.
I mean, I think like understanding the industry and what's happening.
Thanks, thank you very much, I appreciate it, thanks for your feedback. And you know, it's like all of a sudden, and then my story stops. All the signs are white. And that was the end
It's
of
all
it.
right.
But I
Lost
think
my
that,
keys. But,
Roger was talking
So what do you
about,
think?
that small company,
Yeah.
a 0.1% chance on the expected value piece.
Even a guy, and I'm
So,
a certified
you know,
scrum
I don't
master.
really, you know,
And I've run.
I'm not really sure.
You're gonna share.
Oh, yes,
I do know.
to let you know, and so I'm really not, I'm struggling,
I
I
still teach.
be very
I
useful.
don't know.
Duh.
So,
You know, just this customer story and post-it notes is not enough. I have to also know how we're gonna get them, right?
I'm
Right?
working on that.
You're not gonna do that. We'll make sure you don't do that.
So, this.
Unless, well, it depends on what you mean by that.